We are looking at our protocols and procedures, and we are going to ensure that something like this never happens again. I have put a directive to all of our investigators and staff that we will not be euthanizing any animals at this point.
Staff were able to mobilize an FWC early detection and rapid response volunteer who went out and humanely captured and killed the individual that you see.
One of the deputies turned away because he couldn't watch.
That is a very violent way to end something's life.
This is a rogue department. It is unacceptable.
Okay, it's an isolated incident.
You get to determine what is our pet.
Snakes, a lizard, and a crocodile were removed from a home in Beaver County, Pennsylvania.
My Lord, a snapping turtle. Wow.
Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to get right into the video because we've got a lot to cover today. After the events of April 6th, which will go down in history as the Holy Thursday Massacre, perpetrated by Florida's Fish and Wildlife Commission, the reptile community banded together in an unprecedented way leading up to the commission meeting in May. Those who attended and spoke, and those who wrote letters and made phone calls and shared videos from USARK and others, did an incredible job of calling out the FWC for their blatant lies, deception, and killing of pets. While the meeting could have shown more contrition and accountability from FWC, we did defeat the whitelist ban and get one wonderful assurance from the new executive director, Roger Young, and that was that in the wake of these tragic events, that a new directive had been put out to every member of the FWC, that they were no longer to euthanize any animal except in exigent circumstances.
We are looking at our protocols and procedures, and we are going to ensure that something like this never happens again. I have put a directive to all of our investigators and staff that we will not be euthanizing any animals at this point unless it's in exigent circumstances in the field regarding something else.
Later, when asked by USARK Florida's Daniel Parker what he meant by exigent circumstances, Executive Director Young made it very clear this was reserved for situations in which an animal needed to be put down humanely because it was suffering, had been hit by a car, was on the side of the road, and things like that.
What would those circumstances be?
Side of the road issues with animals that get hit or something like that. So we're not talking about all captive, we're talking about all wildlife. So there's cases where officers have to do that, have no choice for law enforcement purposes.
Most of us saw this and came out of that experience knowing that there was still a conversation to be had and that the fight wasn't over yet. But at least we had gotten that directive, and at least the inhumane killing would stop. That last part, as I know many of you called, was anything but true. The two stories you're about to hear are heartbreaking and infuriating, and one is particularly graphic and disturbing. While body cam footage for that does exist and will be linked in the description below, I'm only going to show parts of it here and try to keep out the most graphic aspects. As you listen to these stories, please keep in mind that these officers are not acting of their own volition. They are under direct order to carry out these tasks, an order given in understood direct defiance of Roger Young's directive. But for now, just let it sink in that there are certain members of FWC staff who are willing to disobey a clear directive from their executive director as long as it means they can keep killing people's pets. One of these particularly shameful individuals is FWC's Director of Habitat and Species Conservation, Melissa Tucker, who is the person that we have to thank for our first story, both in bringing it to our attention and likely its execution. On August 9, 2023, 3 short months after the directive was issued, an Orlando, Florida resident noticed something digging underneath their mobile home. This would turn out to be what FWC would call a black-throated monitor. Since then, several people have pointed out that this is actually a white throat monitor, but nobody is surprised that FWC is still misidentifying species. The resident then called the FWC invasive species hotline, 888 I've Got One, which ironically is the same number advertised for their amnesty and adoption program, but we'll come back to that. The following morning, the resident sent photos to FWC, and an early detection rapid response volunteer was dispatched by the folks at the Non-Native Fish and Wildlife Program, led by Melissa Tucker, to go out and kill this animal. Shortly after arriving at the mobile home, the monitor was captured in what appears to be a live trap, and, in violation of the directive, killed on site. Neither black nor white throat monitors have established populations in Florida. So while non-native, they are not an invasive species, which means this was somebody's escaped pet. I was shocked to see Melissa Tucker actually understand and reiterate this distinction while speaking at the House Agricultural Conservation and Resiliency Subcommittee just moments before bragging about killing this monitor.
There are more than 500 non-native species that have been reported in Florida, although not all of these are representing a reproducing and established population. There are many non-native species that are present here in the state that are not invasive species. The risk assessments that I described earlier have helped us to identify when a species that's reported is a high priority and to mobilize staff to respond. An example of this occurred in August earlier this year when we received a report through our invasive species hotline from a member of the public. They reported a 4 to 5 foot lizard that was burrowing under their home in Orlando. We then received the photos that you see here and identified this as a black-throated monitor. Monitors are a high priority species for us because we know that they have an impact on our native fish and wildlife. Staff were able to mobilize an FWC early detection and rapid response volunteer who went out and humanely captured and killed the individual that you see.
If you've only just loosely been keeping up, or are bad with names as I am, and Melissa Tucker sounds familiar to you but you can't quite place it, let me refresh your memory. Melissa is the one who said this.
No one will need to give up their pet.
Which, as we all know, is something that Commissioner Barretto repeated.
So no one's telling you you have to go get rid of your pet or euthanize it. No one's from the state's gonna take it away from you.
She is also the one that pushed for the whitelist, options 1 and 2, essentially ignoring all input from the technical assistance group and attempting to unilaterally move forward with it.
Species that have been evaluated would maintain the regulatory status quo unless a future risk determination necessitates reclassification. So that's the option that we presented on the slide last time for option 2.
At the last tag, there were interpretation 1 and 2. I just was wondering if there was a reason for that nomenclature change, or if it's going to change at the commission meeting to option instead of interpretation.
Yeah, we will use option for the commissioners.
Is there a reason for that? Or just, that's no reason? Okay.
A move that was fortunately defeated by USARK Florida, and all of you. If anybody watching this doesn't have all of the up-to-date information, I am putting together a playlist, it will be up here, of all of my coverage of all of that stuff. The Holy Thursday Massacre, the whitelist, all of that. Or head over to the USARK Florida pages to stay up to date on everything going on that front. All their links will be in the description. We'll come back to that in a little bit. The next story I will do my best to relay calmly, but understand it will be an effort because it is horrific. 18 months ago, Palm Coast, Florida resident Michael Hansen came across a dead mother deer on the side of the road. And with her, her newborn baby, who would later be known to all as Baboo. Michael, knowing that this little fawn would certainly die if he didn't help it, decided to bring Baboo home with him. He thought that Baboo would only stay with him a few days and then, when he was strong enough, venture out on his own. But almost a year and a half later, Baboo had become a staple member of the family. That is, until October 5th, when Hansen's neighbor, John Newman, was reportedly attacked. John had already called FWC on Baboo for eating his garden, and body cam footage would later show Mr. Newman returning from urgent care, to which he drove himself, with minor cuts and no stitches neither.
Well, the person that was... Okay. How's your legs? Did she say he got you in the legs?
I got like 9 spots. 9 spots?
Did you get any stitches?
I just cleaned it, just like went in like this, so it didn't go deep.
Oh, kind of up the... Okay.
Kind of whole wall. It's strong, even the small one, it's strong enough.
Oh, yeah, he's strong.
He's fighting, he's fighting. He ain't done.
23, 224, no. We don't have tranquil.
At that point, you can't do that.
What story I heard on this guy? Somebody raised him.
Yeah, that's what we're hearing too. He's not far though. He's close.
No, he's about done.
Body cam footage would also show that Flagler County Sheriff's Office Agricultural Deputy Steve Williams, as well as FWC Senior Officer Kurt Harris, both believed that it was most likely that Baboo was just trying to play with Newman when the attack occurred, or that Baboo was in rut, but that there was likely nothing wrong with him.
So with him being seemed like he was very friendly because he wasn't afraid of us, makes me wonder if he just wasn't wanting to play, not so much attack but play. But that's the problem, you know. When a deer plays, it's different than me and you playing, you know. Well, he, like I said, he come up to me. We were together, and he come right up to the door and sniffed me. So I said, well, he's not, and he didn't like crazy. He acted like he was used to being hand fed.
Not his first time.
No, it's not his first time. And he saw, he wasn't afraid of us at all. Oh. He thought I was playing. Otherwise, you'd never be able to do that. That sucker would have ran me down. He didn't act like he was in a rut. He was laying down in the shade looking at us, wagging his tail, and I called him, and he stood up, followed me down the thing, and put my hand out, and he just come, and then put his head down, like, you know, I want to play. And I think that's all he did with the guy. He was out there, he come up, rubbed on him, wanting to play. I don't think it was a deliberate, yeah.
But we still have to do.
Yeah, you still got to do it. Yeah.
I wish we could go for the head.
Yeah. I know, but I guess they want to test it and see, make sure. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with them other than being hand fed.
This is probably second rut. They probably feed this deer.
The guy came up and said it belongs to the guy at 29 something. He told him. He said belongs.
What happened in the moments prior to this conversation was anything but humane and ethical. Earlier that day, neighbor John Newman, the man attacked, was out doing some yard work. While he was bent over picking up leaves, Baboo came and knocked him over. When he got up, he pushed Baboo off of him and ended up sustaining a few cuts to his hands and his leg. It was at this point that another neighbor called 911. Newman says it was not him. By the time Flagler County Sheriff's Office had arrived, John had already left to go to the urgent care. As his wife said, just to be safe.
Oh, he drove himself? Oh, wow. Because I don't get a bunch of clear notes. It sounded like the neighbor was taking them, and then it sounded like they didn't know if he was going or not. And...
Yeah, no. Well, you know, he was concerned.
Oh, absolutely. It's better safe than sorry with something like that, especially when it comes to wild animals, yes.
Because this was FWC's jurisdiction, responding deputy Steve Williams was ordered by FWC to kill it if you can, but don't destroy the brain. This is because FWC wanted to test the brain for diseases such as rabies and chronic wasting disease. This directive was given with no knowledge of the condition of the deer and no context whatsoever, other than a man was attacked by a deer. Deputy Williams can be heard saying multiple times in the body cam footage that Baboo is friendly, just wants to play, and seems very healthy. He is also informed by multiple residents that Baboo's behavior is due to him being rescued by another neighbor and raised from a baby, referring of course to Michael. At some point prior to all of this, Williams was informed that Michael had plans to take Baboo to a farm to allow him to live out his days in an area where he wouldn't be a bother or a nuisance to anyone. We know this because Williams repeats it multiple times throughout the body cam footage.
He told him, he said, belongs to him. He was going to make an arrangement to have him taken to a farm somewhere because they've been feeding the sucker out here.
Oh, I wouldn't. This thing doesn't just come in someone's backyard.
No, the lady said it's been staying in some woods over there, but I asked him, the guy come up and told him, said, it belongs to that guy, and I'll tell you who it belongs to. He's been raising this thing and feeding it, and you can tell because he come right up to me back there and sniffed me and everything.
That's why it's that rut. It's probably second rut right now.
That's why this guy
said he was going to try and make an arrangement to get him to a farm somewhere or something. Yeah.
Despite all of this, Williams has his directive from FWC. And keeping a deer is illegal in the state of Florida. He pulls out a snare pole, and Baboo walks happily up to him with no idea what's about to happen next. He allows the deputy to put the noose around his neck, but once it's tightened, he begins to fight to get away. He's then tied to a telephone pole where another officer pulls out a pocket knife and stabs him in the neck. I don't know if any of you hunt or know people who hunt. It's a big thing here in New York, and sometimes when shooting and tracking a deer, usually in cases where it's a bad shot, it is sometimes necessary to perform a final fatal act, whether that be another shot or cutting the throat. While I don't hunt personally, I am an avid outdoorsman and I have a lot of friends who do hunt. I'm also in a lot of outdoors groups that involve hunting and fishing. I often ask about it because it's the one thing that keeps me from hunting myself. Something that I find most off-putting about hunting. It's something that I couldn't do personally. Some of the people that I've asked refuse to talk about it. Some say they almost quit hunting after having to do that. And some say they cried like a baby. Hunters are some of the most respectful conservationists that I know. At least the hunters that I know. These are all big burly outdoorsmen, and to a man, everyone talked about how traumatic it was to cut the throat of a deer. I'm telling you this because of what happens next. In order to successfully cut the throat of a deer, between their thick coat and thick hide, you need a very sharp, decent-sized knife. And the cut needs to be deep and clean.
Unfortunately, I mean, do we want to do it fast? Absolutely, but it's kind of hard on a live animal.
Yes, it's real hard. I mean, you almost have to cut their head off to do it like that.
I saw the machete back there, but
you hate to be whacking on something. Everybody's seeing that. Yeah.
or right now to fire a round off now that we've got it contained. But
Yeah. But if you don't hit the spinal right, then you end up doing a second shot. And they go, yeah, shoot that thing 15 times. Yeah.
Since Baboo was simply stabbed in the neck with a pocket knife, he was still alive, and would remain alive for another 15 minutes, bleeding into the grass until FWC's senior officer Scott Harris arrived on scene. At first, Harris wanted to shoot Baboo in the head and end it quickly, but that was until Williams informed him of the orders that had come from higher up in FWC.
I'm saying we put one in the head.
Can we put it in the head?
You can't put it in the head because it's got to go to
Oh,
the...
they want it.
Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't pull it by myself. I would have shit right behind the ear.
Yeah, I think Ramsey or Miller, one of them told me, hey, if I can put it down, but don't shoot it in the head.
Despite Baboo appearing to have been a happy, healthy deer, well, until all this began, they had their orders. And after a very long discussion about what to do, and looking all over to make sure no one was watching, Senior Officer Harris pulled out his sidearm and shot Baboo behind the shoulder and into his chest. 3 minutes later, Baboo, now with horrific injuries, is still alive, and another officer comes over with his knife and saws through Baboo's throat. In 2 more minutes, Baboo was dead. In total, Baboo spent the last 27 minutes of his life in absolute terror and horrible pain, as officers at the direction of FWC inflicted injury upon injury, all in the name of studying the brain of a deer that was a beloved pet and that seemed to be in perfect health. The full body cam footage is linked below if you would like to see it, but I do recommend discretion. This all obviously led to public outcry, as Baboo was loved by many people and many of the neighbors there. So how did FWC respond to this? According to a local news outlet known as The Observer, an unnamed FWC spokesperson in an emailed statement had this to say. The deer was humanely euthanized after it did not retreat and was sent to Gainesville for testing. Humanely euthanized. In another official statement, FWC had this to say. Testing requires the brain of the deer to remain intact. Therefore, a decision was made by these officers to utilize a 2-step process to put the deer down. Public safety and humane treatment are factors that played into the decision to sever an artery in the neck of the deer, followed by a gunshot to the chest once the animal was laying down in a position where it became safe for the officer to discharge a firearm in the community. Why are you lying to us, FWC? Body cams exist. 68,000 people watched that body cam footage. He didn't get shot once he was lying down. He was lying down for 20 minutes with a hole in his neck. There was nothing humane about it. Does any of this fall within your anti-cruelty laws? FWC describes this as a humane 2-step process. Where have we heard that before? Oh yes, when they're describing how they render animals unconscious before killing them. That is, when they choose to follow the process. I guess they will call anything a humane 2-step process when they don't follow it though, right? They only use these terms to paint the picture that this is some planned and professional recourse, thinking that if they simply say it, it'll be true. Which in this case, as body cam footage shows, is utterly ridiculous. It's the same way they use the term euthanize instead of kill, to soften the optics. Apparently FWC's 2-step process is to have local law enforcement show up on the scene and stab a fully conscious animal in the neck with a pocket knife. Then they wait for FWC to show up, and when FWC shows up, FWC looks around frantically to make sure nobody is watching, and then shoots it behind the shoulder. And then, when it still isn't dead, they saw through its throat. And this is only after 25 minutes of torturing it. Humane 2-step process. That's a lot more steps than 2 by my math. Is there a reason it couldn't be tranquilized and rendered unconscious before all of this?
We don't have tranquilizers, ma'am. No. We don't have tranquil.
At that point, you can't do that.
Is there a reason that it couldn't have gone to that farm to live out its days? Is there a reason it couldn't go to a wildlife sanctuary? The same goes for the monitor. The same people answering the phone at the 1-888 I've Got One hotline are responsible for both sending officers to kill pets and finding a new home for your pet. Is there a reason that monitor couldn't be rehomed? There were multiple people who were ready, willing, waiting to take it, much like with the Holy Thursday Massacre, who either had space available themselves or knew of somebody who would be willing to take it. Is there a reason that FWC's first recourse to these things, despite having a directive not to euthanize, is to kill an animal? Yes, there is. The reason is that Melissa Tucker and the faction of FWC whose mentality aligns with hers simply do not value life, and would rather kill anything non-native, invasive or not, rather than operate in a truly humane and ethical way. This is the same group of people who are responsible for all of these terrible laws, the Holy Thursday Massacre itself, and all of these other deaths. This ideology has got to go. So where does the new executive director stand on all of this? Early last week, I wrote to Colonel Roger Young and Deputy Director Shannon Knowles, asking 3 questions. 1, has the directive issued in May been disbanded? 2, was the killing of this monitor in direct violation to this directive? Or 3, were these considered exigent circumstances? And if so, what was the context of it? Roger has yet to reply. Shannon has replied, unfortunately only sending this canned response. Hi John, on August 9, 2023, FWC staff received a report through our invasive species hotline from a member of the public of a 4 to 5 foot lizard digging under their mobile home in Orlando. The following morning, FWC staff received photos verifying the lizard as a non-native black throat monitor. FWC Non-Native Fish and Wildlife Program staff were able to contact an FWC early detection rapid response volunteer who was able to quickly respond to, capture, and humanely kill the monitor before it could cause negative impacts on Florida's ecosystems. Shannon Knowles, Deputy Director, Office of Community Relations, FWC. I am aware what happened, Shannon. That's why I had questions about it. It may sound silly in light of all of this, but I still have hope that I will hear back from Colonel Young, and hopefully in support of what is ethical and condemning the killing of pets, as he has given the impression of believing before. Executive Director Young has already made some changes in FWC leadership that do back up those sentiments, including pushing out the old director, Eric Sutton, who did not want to work with the industry at all, and firing Thomas Eason, who previously held the position Melissa has before she got it, and later served as Assistant Executive Director, and later as Acting Director briefly. And both of these guys have the same mentality as Melissa Tucker. I sincerely hope that Roger continues to clean house, and that his directives are enforced. He has already shown his willingness to work with the industry and pet owners, and I hope the next step is accountability for those in that faction of FWC whose outlook is terribly flawed and who have made the truly unfortunate and irreversible decisions that they have. I have reason to believe there will be more breaking about this story in the coming weeks, and when I am able to, I will of course make another video to keep you updated. But in the meantime, head over to USARK Florida. They're going to be covering this topic. They already have a video, and it should be coming out very soon. USARK Florida is where you want to be. When that video comes out, go watch it in its entirety, share it around, and if you could share this video around as well, and hit the like button, that would be awesome, and I would greatly appreciate that too. We were able to make a racket that the entire world heard last time. Let's do it again with this, and continue to hope for a positive outcome. I know it's exhausting. Look at me. I feel like I've aged like 20 years since covering FWC stuff. I know it's exhausting. It feels like 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but that is not a reason for us to go quietly. USARK and USARK Florida have been on the front lines of these things for years, and they're not stopping. So if nothing else, go support them. Go become a member of USARK and USARK Florida. All the links to all the things, as always, will be down in the description. And as always, remember to be kind to yourselves and each other. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.